Ready to rock and roll? All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Committee on Public Safety and Mass Transit. This is our first session. Today's date is February 3rd, 2015. The time is approximately for 11 or 5 minutes before 11. Please turn off your cell phones, pagers, and other mobile communication devices, or at least put them on silent. I'm calling this meeting to order. I'd like to introduce council members to my far right. Council Member Ilgan, Council Member Miley David, and to my far left, I'm sure Dennis will be here shortly, Council Member Margaret Willie, Council Member Aaron Chan, Council Member Karen Eoff, Council Chair Drew Kanuha, and Council Vice Chair Valerie Point Dexter. Okay, we're going to be taking statements from the public this morning. Do we have any statements from Pohoa or Kona?
Good morning, Chair. This is Mike from Pahoa. We have one testifier, maybe another two on the way. So right now, one for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And in Kona, we have no testifiers for your committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Waimea, Kohala.
Good morning, Chair. This is Waimea. We do not have any testifiers for your committee.
And
Good morning, Chair. From Kohala, we have no testifiers for your committee.
Thank you. Ka'u.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Sandy in Ocean View. We have no testifiers for your committee today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, let's start with Pohoa. Please introduce yourself, and then just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes. Summarize when it comes up to the 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first testifier is Mr. John Olson, representing himself, speaking or making a comment on communication number 62. Whenever you're ready, sir.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The rhetorical question is, there is a lava emergency. Why do we have an emergency? The lava has been flowing for about 32 years. It has changed direction as of recently. We have an emergency out here because it is now headed in the direction of the only highway that allows us to get in and out of the southeastern part of Puna. Well, how did that happen? The county has known since 1973 that there were hazard zones. The county has known since 1983 where that lava would go when it turned to an easterly direction. Back in the mid-90s, we did the Puna Regional Circulation Plan. That was federal money, something in the neighborhood of $200,000, to identify emergency response issues that would be created by lava moving in an easterly direction. The county has never implemented that plan. That's why we have an emergency. I'm not directing this particularly at anyone in government currently. This has been going on for a long time. We have known that the possibility of this existed. We have made some planning that we have failed to implement. Now we have an emergency. The emergency continues because they have created unpaved roads. That is not a happy situation. People are concerned about the reliability of those unpaved corridors, and they may have to be used for days, weeks, months, years, or decades going forward. You can see how slowly this is unfolding. I hope you have some substantive discussion about making those corridors more permanent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olsen. Having no other testifiers in the outlying areas, let's move on to Hilo, which I believe we have 3 testifiers this morning. So without further ado, I'll move on to Ms. Cash.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Recently, I've attended several community meetings out in Pahoa, and dozens of our residents out there. And I want to thank Mr. Paleka and Mr. Iligan. I know Mr. Iligan is so humble to say it's just his job to go to these meetings. But I want to thank you both for attending those community meetings and listening to the residents there. This, I guess, is a Puna problem. But it does affect all of us, in terms of county housing and also the cost of to the county of health care and other services. So it's not just a Puna problem. We're an island. We're all family here. I understand this, yeah. So it's not the weird cousins in Puna, okay? This is our family, extended family. So I'm here today because at those meetings there was great concern voiced, and I think with what kind of civil defense planning has been incorporated, and I hope today to hear from our civil defense leader that the planning for routes and how to really address the concerns of real concerns for the health and safety, and incorporating what's going to happen, like happened in Ezell. We were lucky with Ezell. I've been in a 220-mile-an-hour hurricane in my history. I know what those things can do. What we're told is that we should expect with climate change much more severe storms. So this is all part of our planning, must be part of our planning as a community. So, but the concern is that how are we going to protect the health and safety if that plant loses power, the geothermal plant loses power, and those roads are closed like they were recently? How are we going to protect the health and safety of the citizens there? So this is my concern today, and I hope it will be addressed. Thank you. I'm good. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Cash.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Thomas Lee Travis. Please, Mr. Travis.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Tom Travis. I reside in Lower Puna. I served 30 years in the Navy as a Navy submariner. After that career, I worked for 15 years as a government servant, 12 years as a government servant, where I worked lessons learned for the chairman of the Joint Staff in the Department of Defense. I served as studies director. I give you that background mainly so that you understand, I hope that my comments are informed. One of the threats of the lava flow is that it restricts transportation to and from Puna Geothermal Venture and the surrounding community. The second threat is that it poses the danger of placing one of the 2 transmission lines from PGV out of order for a prolonged period of time. Both of these threats directly impact the validity of the emergency response for casualties at PGV. Threats from the lava flow pose similar challenges in a PGV upset as those faced by civil defense during the landfall of Tropical Storm Ezell. A thorough evaluation of lessons learned from Ezell should be done, followed by a thoughtful revision to both the PGV and county portion of emergency response planning. I strongly urge both the mayor and the county council to take strong action to address the issues outlined that I'm going to discuss below. First major problem is that the PGV emergency response plan incorrectly allows the plant to operate power when there is an unacceptable risk of losing electrical load. essentially when a plant loses power, relief valves have to lift, dumping geothermal fluid into the community. If everything works right, that release may not affect health, but if anything else goes wrong, it most definitely does affect and threaten the health of the community in the surrounding area. The second issue with the county
You have
of
30
Hawaii,
seconds.
the County of Hawaii emergency response to Tropical Storm Iselle placed residents in an unnecessary danger. Similar challenges face County of Hawaii with a lava flow. Issues identified but not effectively addressed include inadequate warning and alarm, inadequate staging of resources, inadequate options for evacuation, and inadequate practice and rehearsal. If the county has followed the concept of operations...
Please summarize, Mr. Travis.
In conclusion, over 100 people experienced health effects from the toxic release from PGV. The County of Hawaii needs to learn those lessons and be sure that we do not have another repeat as a consequence of the lava flow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Travis. Our next...
Will he stay here for, will you be here for the discussion, Mr. Travis?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next testifier, Ms. Harden.
Okay. Good morning. Corey Harden again, commenting on Communication 62, the lava update. I'm speaking for myself. I'd like to thank Margaret Willey for bringing this up. I would like to ask you folks to ask the mayor to use his emergency powers to shut down PGV if lava cuts off Route 130 and or the power lines feeding PGV. At last Thursday's meeting in Pahoa, PGV said they will continue their day and night drilling and keep running the plant even if lava cuts off Route 130 and cuts off one or both of the two power lines that feed PGV. PGV said they might also run the plant as a standalone power source for Puna if both power lines are cut off. So you got to worry about multiple emergencies happening at once. So several questions. One, what is the emergency plan for a Route 130 cutoff plus no electric power plus a lava evacuation plus a geothermal release plus drilling? I mean, things can quickly get real dicey. When residents asked about an emergency plan last Thursday, PGV just said the county or state is responsible, but actually the county rules say PGV has to develop something and civil defense has to approve. It's not that easy. As Tom said, there was no plan for a geothermal release plus a tropical storm, and now we have over 100 people reporting health effects. Based on Puna Pono Alliance records, in the past 16 years, geothermal releases and other incidents have occurred on average once every 3 months. Second question, what problems could arise if PGV tries to run as a standalone power source? They'd need to reduce their power output. They might put temporary plugs in some wells, and so how long would those plugs last? They might run the wells at a reduced rate, but would you have solids precipitating out of the brine and blocking the flow? Third question, if PGV has power, but only from one power line, how much more likely is a geothermal release? As Tom said, when there's a power outage, you'll get a release. You can't just turn the steam off down there.
You have 30 seconds.
Is supposed to abate them with sodium hydroxide, but this does not take chemicals that are out of the steam, and sometimes people end up with this fine powder all over their catchment tanks and everything else. Fourth question, what is the county's liability if it knowingly allows hazardous conditions at PGV? And so please take action. I feel like decisions about public health and safety should not be made by private companies, just answering to a few shareholders, but government officials who answer to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harden. Do we have any other testifiers? Pahoa?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for getting back to us. We have 2 more testifiers for your committee.
Okay, please introduce your testifiers. Just a reminder, 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Our first of the two testifiers will be Ms. Sarah Steiner, representing herself. Would like to speak in support of Communication 62. Whenever you're ready, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Sarah Steiner. I moved to Pahoa in 1985, and I've lived and worked here since then. I just would have a few requests when we're getting this update. I have some questions. I'd like to know how much money has been spent so far on the state and county level, including the National Guard pay and the overtime for the police and security people protecting us, you know, from the cold lava. I'd like to know how the government plans to sustain the level of the expenditures without bankrupting the county. I'd like to know, along the lines of Dr. Mark Kimura's social impact study, I want an update on how many vacant homes there are in the Pahoa subdivisions directly related to the panic television coverage and the lava maps with the giant arrows and the 2-week deadlines as to when the lava is going to get to your place. I'd like to know how many school children and their families were forcibly relocated to KL. I'd like to know how long they'll be remaining in their little cubes in the parking lot at the KL schools. And let's see, I'd like to know personally why civil defense and the mayor can't look at how civil defense and the mayors handled the Kalapana flow since 1983. I'd like to know why they can't study the slow and steady nature of the lava and the slow and steady response that the government should have, could have, we would wish they'd have. And finally, studies have shown that humans do not exist well in constant states of stressful emergencies. And since we live on the side of an active volcano, which we know has been flowing and covers the area every...
I'm sorry, Pahoa, there's something going on with the mic.
Oh, darn! I bet there is something. I want to know how long you plan on keeping the state of emergency active and how long you plan on keeping all the kids in KO if the lava doesn't come for another year or two. Are they still going to be there? Thank you. I'm sorry I'm upset. I feel
not a problem. I believe the mic was under your papers or something. Just a technical difficulty. Any other testifier, Pahoa? Morning, Bob. Go ahead. Anytime you're ready.
To testify today, and I want to talk about, you know, we've had we're under these other emergency problems now with the lava, and that does impact PGV because there is no workable community emergency response plan for the geothermal plant, and that was demonstrated again during Hurricane Estelle, when people were trapped in their homes and they were just left there to breathe the gas. And a lot of people were hurt because of that. So, and now PGV is saying, well, we can operate on one line. Well, they've been, even with 2 lines, they've had 17 declared civil defense emergencies at that power plant. Let's see. There's no notification system that works to let the community know what's happening. The county's emergency response plan for the geothermal plant is a shiny trifold little brochure, but it's ineffective. It doesn't work, and as a community, we're left there to deal with this ourselves. And PGV doesn't seem to be too concerned about us. So. Let's see. So, you know, if there's only one line, just so everybody understands it, with one transmission line, every time there's a problem with that line, the power plant is going to release poison gas into the community. How are you guys going to deal with that? It's way past time. After the blowout in 91, the state investigation recommended an emergency response plan, and they laid it out. The county just refused to adopt it. And what they have now clearly doesn't function. A lot of people got hurt on August 7th because of that. And before you allow PGV to operate on one line, you at least need to implement a real workable emergency response plan. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do we have any other testifiers? I believe we have. Having silence, I believe we have none. So we'll move forward. So, Mr. Clerk, would you please read communication 62 into the record?
Communications 62. Request an update by the Civil Defense Administrator and the Public Works Director regarding the lava flow emergency from Council Member Margaret Willie, dated December 2nd, 2014.
May I have a motion to close file on communication 62?
So moved.
Moved by Council Member Willie and seconded by Ms. Willie?
I think moved by Ms. Willie and seconded
moved by Ms. Willie and
David.
seconded by Ms. David. So, any discussion on the matter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Moment.
come on up.
You know what? Let's bring up Civil Defense Director Oliveira, so kind to grace us with his presence. Good morning, Mr. Oliveira.
Okay,
Morning.
I want to going to speak first.
Just a second. Good morning, Mr. Oliveira. Thank
Morning.
you for coming. Is Public Works coming also today? No. Go ahead, Ms. Willie.
Okay. I just want to stress that I do believe this is an island-wide issue, and I think it's important to bring it here, not just sort of immediate what's happening today and this week and tomorrow, but sort of long range and what different issues. And I think I really appreciate having the public come forward and stress, what are their pressing concerns. I think in my memo, I tried to stress that this is, not just looking at the roots, but coordinating different needs, whether or housing or animals, and just sort of allowing for more of a full discussion by all of us. I think one thing that has come up a lot is sort of emergency management plans, and I have really, and looking at today, and also looking forward, such as what your person, Troy Scott, is doing, and how do we learn from all of this. So I do have, let you go ahead, and then I'll speak. But I do want to also talk about, sort of the funding and finances and really lava tourism. I really think, going back to what Senator Rutterman said at the last meeting and what I think has been reinforced by some of the speakers, just this is a part of life. And whether it's the high demand for T-shirts and how do we finance this, and how do we really try to look at some of the silver linings and try to make what are the positives, and how can we try to assist with the funding. But I'll go ahead and allow him to speak, and then I'll continue. So if you want to just, Darryl, sort of give a general report, but I think one of the things that's clearly on the public's mind is in terms of our multiple hazards with PGV, and perhaps address that. And second, I didn't realize there was some past emergency response plan, and what happened to that, and where that's going on there.
Sure. Well, I guess starting with the update on the eruption, and Tom has offered to help me with the maps, and again, apologize. But as we post every day in partnership with HVO, we try to share as much information. HVO is unable to fly every day due to budget constraints. We do fly every morning, 6:30 every morning, and we update maps on a website, Civil Defense website, and we share the same information with HVO so they can update their public releases. This map shows you as of this morning what we saw in the overflight, and that is very little activity as far as any kind of advancement. We're seeing a lull, if you want to call it, on the downslope activity. What we do see is breakouts on the surface of the pad. When we say breakouts, it's leakage in the lava tube system, the plumbing, causing an oozing out. So there's obvious evidence that lava is making its way all the way down to the leading edges of the flow, but nothing that's advancing at this time. What this map shows, in addition to the current state of where the lava flow is at, where it was headed, the direction, and we were giving reference points as far as Highway 130 and the area of the police and fire station. Up until recently, that's when it was advancing, the direction that it was going, and that's where the area that was, you could say, under a threat of being affected by the advancing flow. The blue line that you see here, and as HVO has published on their maps, and has been doing an awesome job with sharing with the community, these are what they call paths of steepest descent. These are topographical features that if you poured water on the ground, the water would tend to flow in these low spots, gullies, these ravines, that in some cases are very subtle. They're not real obvious out there on the ground, but enough of a topographical feature that could help to channelize or direct the flow of water. And if what we've seen with the lava, because it does to a certain degree behave similar to water, it does tend to follow the paths of steepest descent. And as you can see by this blue line here, it was following one. And in this particular direction, and this is where it posed a threat to the marketplace, which resulted in some of the vendors there or merchants there voluntarily evacuating based on, at one point, it was just a few hundred yards from their backyard. Right now, as I said, we haven't seen any type of advancement, although we are seeing evidence that lava is still making its way down to that distal areas. In consultation with HVO, we are under a period of a slight deflation, which means the swelling on the summit areas are going down. But there's no evidence to support that there's any indication that this is going to stop. This could be the next 30-year event, as we've seen in the past 32 years, starting in January of 1983. So as far as, I guess, some critical concerns or issues with regards to a response plan, from the very start with the threat of the lava flow, we've approached things from, thanks, Tom. We've approached things from the standpoint of, one is access, ensuring that the community, if Highway 130 was in any way severed or breached, that they would continue to have access. And that was the reason for moving forward with the establishment of the Railroad Avenue, alternate access route, the improvements to Government Beach Road, and then the pursuit of establishing an alternate route through Chain of Craters. Realizing that every one of those was not going to replace 100% of what Highway 130 provides now, which is a much more effective and safe transportation corridor, but would be an alternate or a alternate access to support the community. Some of the information, like, as was questioned by members of the public, the study from Dr. Kimura, many of the residents in the area overwhelmingly state that they would like to remain in place. Some may not have a choice because of the financial constraints being faced with dropping real estate values, unable to get insurance, unable to get a mortgage, a number of different factors. So there is going to be a percentage of the population that has no choice. There's also a percentage of the population that would like to remain. This is home for them, and this is where they'd like to live. So the numbers are fairly high with those people that would be affected by any kind of impact to Highway 130 or the severing of that highway. So transportation was a big issue and a priority to ensure alternate access routes were established. Now, the question or the concern with that not being a paved road, or those aren't paved roads, they are compacted gravel, all-weather surface roads. We had opened up railroad momentarily to allow the residents and the public to familiarize themselves with that road last month. And we did see some wear and tear, but nothing that would pose any problem with maintaining the road or keeping it open. I know the mayor has discussed with myself as well as with Mr. Lee the possibility of paving that road to provide more, or less maintenance requirements and make it a much more comfortable and sustainable alternate access road. So those discussions are continuing with whether or not to pave the Railroad Avenue alternate access routes. So second to road access was the issue of power. Now, HELCO, in, again, the early stages of this event and in response to the threat to their infrastructure, had gone ahead and rerouted or put in additional poles and lines to try to distribute power or realign power from other areas in the community. So they did run new poles and new lines up along Government Beach Road across that will allow them to bring power into the community if they lost some of their other distribution lines due to the lava flow. If you recall early on when the flow was crossing Apaa Street or Cemetery Road, that is a corridor for one of their main distribution lines where they implemented some of their pole protection measures, which is the surrounding of the poles with aggregate concrete and some insulation to try to save the poles and protect them from any inundation. So HELCO was doing an incredible job in trying to preserve their infrastructure as well as put in alternate infrastructure to provide for redundancies and to support uninterrupted power and service in the community. And the same was for all the other utility companies, Hawaiian Tel, Oceanic, Time Warner, because they share much of the infrastructure that HELCO puts in. They also piggybacked on the project of bringing the poles in on Government Beach Road and bringing alternate communication pathways through those same poles and infrastructure. So the utility companies were working very well from the very get-go to try to ensure uninterrupted service, communications, and power. Department of Water Supply also had recognized the threat and vulnerabilities of their system. They brought a second water well site up online. This is the site just behind the Pahoa High School. So they actually set up a system or a contingency plan that if the flow was to cross Highway 130 in any way affect their water main system, they could valve off the system and create two separate systems to support the community, again, with uninterrupted service. So I feel very confident in our utility operators that they were doing everything they can and have done everything they can and continue to work very closely with us to identify threats to their systems and contingency plans to ensure uninterrupted service. The next was with regards to the school system. The Department of Education did make a decision early on when the threat appeared to be imminent to redistribute school students to avoid some of the challenges they would be faced with and the families would be faced with trying to commute through the Railroad Avenue and Beach Road alternate access roads to provide for access to quality education. A decision was made to redistribute students to the Keao School, Mountain View schools, and other schools in the area to try to minimize that impact and provide for an uninterrupted educational experience for the remainder of the school year. And we continue to have discussions with the Department of Education, recognizing that the threat level does ebb and flow, and that we see right now a very calm period, no immediate threat, but still the presence of lava making its way down to the flow front. And the decision has been made that they will maintain the students in place as is for the remainder of the school year and continue to evaluate the threat level. And if it continues to decline or decrease, then consideration will be given to bringing the students back. They've also been working with the students and parents. As an example, the students in Pahoa High School that were relocated who would like to graduate with their home school, with Pahoa, will be supported with that. So I think there's been efforts made to try to maintain the connectivity for the students with their home campus, their friends, their programs, including athletics, in face of, at one point, what was an imminent threat. The next is with healthcare. Many of the healthcare providers in the community have been partnering to identify gaps and ways that they can overcome the challenges and adversities the community will face with access to healthcare. So both the Bay Clinic as well as the Puna Community Medical Center have identified alternate sites. They've relocated their operations. They are providing access to healthcare in their community. Prior to Long's temporarily closing their operation, there was discussions on ensuring that access to pharmacies and pharmaceuticals would be made available in the community. And CVS, again in partnership with the Bay Clinic, had identified a mechanism to provide that uninterrupted access to pharmaceutical services. But fortunately, again, with the change in the flows, behavior, and activity, we've seen the return of Longs to the community. The Ace Hardware came back on February 1st, this past Sunday. We are in discussion with Malama Market. They're in the process of trying to return as well. There's a number of things or a number of actions taken on different or the parts of different organizations and operators out there, but everyone's intent has been to support the community as best possible and provide for no less than what they have now as far as government services and to try to sustain normal life in the community as best possible. But there's no question that this has been a life-altering event for this community, and that's been in the wake of Hurricane Iselle, Tropical Storm Ana. This community has faced many adversities in the last several months. This is one that could go on for months, years, decades, and we're continuing to work with that. I know there's probably more questions for me at this point, and that's just an overview of where we're at currently with the eruption. Again, it's a lull in activity, still a source that's pumping out unlimited supply, and we're just watching it very closely.
Okay. On the, can I continue? Yeah.
Margaret, you want to ask some questions?
Yeah, thanks.
Please.
On the funding issue, sort of, do you have a quick summary of where we're on at that?
I don't have the formal or the total costs that has been expended. I mean, I think you can look at the high cost items such as the establishment of the roads. The state bore a high cost with regards to the relocation of the students. You know, millions of dollars were spent with the portable classrooms. You know, even the nonprofits or the private organizations with the relocation of their operations. As far as county government expenses, it's correct, there have been high costs associated with overtime. With every opportunity that there has been to decrease or downsize and reduce the need for resources, we've reacted that way and try to conserve resources as much as possible. Currently working with the National Guard to, again, reduce their presence out there as a cost-saving measure, as well as the threat and the need for their services have been reducing gradually. So everything has been calculated based on what the risk is presenting at the time, and then as that risk decreases, then reducing the need or dependency on some services that could be reduced.
I think we all certainly appreciate and think you've been doing a great job. So what about the lava tourism? I mean, I've had some visitors, several, and they all want to stay over an extra day if there's something they can go to Pahoa and where to go. And I notice our tourism numbers are up, and it's all to the Big Island, and I think that it's because of this. So just in terms of funding and trying to capitalize, yes, it's an emergency, yes, and all this, but it is part of life here, and how we can just, if there are ways that we can sort of promote that where it's not adding to the transportation risks and the clogging the roads. But and I'm not sure that whether you're the person who's most knowledgeable on this, but just thinking about it without having it interfering with safety issues.
I think an example of our support, you know, not just our office, but I think the administration's support is when there was an opportunity to utilize the transfer station as a forum or a venue to allow for access and to see what's happened. And we do appreciate, I personally can appreciate the desire to see the actual advancing lava, the red hot lava. Unfortunately, it's not in an area that would make it or allow for it to be safe, as well as it's on state land, so we respect the position the state has with concerns for safety. And if and when the flow was to advance into an area that would allow for safe viewing, we would definitely support that. But the use of the transfer station to provide a forum or a venue for access to at least see how this flow has affected the community and what it presented with. And we also use it as an opportunity to help educate the school children who were displaced by the lava flow. We found that experience to be invaluable because many of them were unclear as to why their lives had been turned upside down by something they had never seen. So bringing them out to the lava flow allowed the students, as well as the faculty, some of which are new or are too young to know of a impact, even with Kalapana, to understand why decisions are made and how it affected their lives. That experience, like I said, was invaluable, not just for the students, but for us as well. Our staff was out there for those sessions with the students, interacting, helping to explain and educate how the system works with the roles of each of the agencies, whether it be civil defense with informing them of the threats and hazards, but the partnerships and the response from all the agencies, such as HELCO and Public Works, with ensuring they have road access, that the protection of resources to provide for power. So again, it was a very well-rounded experience to even include the University of Hawaii's geology program students presenting to the students of the public schools the science behind the eruption, on how the Pohohoi lava flow, the characteristics, how it behaves and how it moves. And then obviously also a cultural piece. The cultural aspect of the eruption is significant in our community, and was important to include that as well. So I guess to answer your question, I think we all can appreciate the historical nature of this event, the potential economic benefit it could have with regards to tourism, and it's just balancing that with the safety for everyone.
Right.
And we understand, as we've shared with the community, we're out there every other Thursday now in Pohoa, sharing with them that one of the first opportunities that we might be able to provide for public access and viewing of an advancing lava flow is if and when it does affect Highway 130. And that might provide the corridor and the opportunity to set up a staging and viewing area. But we understand that that also comes with the consequence, which it could affect transportation.
Right.
And safety will always be put first. I know sometimes that may not be understood because we've grown up with this in our backyards, but I think if you've been out on the topography and terrain out there and talked to people who have hunted in that area, they'll tell you right where it's at right now is not safe for people to be walking freely. And I can say with total confidence to you that since the start of this event, we have not had a single injury out in the field. And I think that is testament to trying to keep everybody safe. And it's not that we don't appreciate what people would like to see. It's just trying to balance everything.
Okay, and then
Thank you, Director.
as my 5 minutes up, I have 1 more minute. Okay.
Go ahead.
On the emergency response plan that's been referred to by some members of the community, and sort of a sense that it's been sitting on a shelf, and I just that question and sort of where is that at, or is that something that we need to jump on, and also the concern about the inadequacy of the PGV's emergency plan.
Well, the response plan that PGV has submitted to the county has been in our office and it continues to be updated and worked on. With the events that we've experienced, for me personally, going back to last 2013, the event that we had in March, some gaps that we identified with the response plans, as well as communication and a number of things, as well as with Hurricane Iselle, significant impact in the community. So we're making changes, making revisions, and there's a lot more improvements that can be made. We're working very closely with PGV, Department of Health, our planning department, as well as with the community to try to address and correct some of what some of those gaps are. As an example, coming out of the March 13, 2013 event, it was identified that there wasn't a communications link, a direct communications link between the PGV response team or their operations room and the responding units, mainly the fire department, so that they could communicate effectively whether they were experiencing an abated release, a release that's being treated chemically, which reduces some of the risk, versus an unabated release, which is pure source hydrogen sulfide coming out. That's critical to know from a first responder standpoint, because what are they walking into as well? So we have since issued radios to the PGV control room and staff there so they can talk directly with the responding fire units. We also identified that they don't have cellular coverage at that time in their control room because of the insulation and the type of design and construction. So they've made corrections to that, because when they have a power failure, on that particular incident, when they had a power failure, they lost telephone communications as well. So ensuring that they have redundant communications from within their control room to the 911 dispatch center, to our office, and to the first responders was a critical gap that has been addressed. With their sampling system, with Hurricane Iselle, it became evident that when they have a power failure, the perimeter monitoring or sampling system that's in place went offline. So we had no idea as far as what kind of levels might have been detected on the perimeter of that property. So we requested, prior to PGV restarting as a response or recovery from Hurricane Iselle, prior to restarting the plant, that they have backup power for their monitoring or sampling system. In the interim, while they were trying to bring up, Civil Defense loaned them portable generators so they could bring their portable monitors online. but they've since took it upon themselves and have put in portable generators or backup power for their sampling or monitoring system. There's a number of things, and happy to answer questions specifically, but I think the most important thing I can share is as gaps are identified, corrections are being made, improvements are being made to the response plan. We're working with Department of Health. We submitted a letter requesting that certain conditions be considered as part of the renewal of the non-source permit application, as well as, again, post-Zell, the request that PGV's internal response plan include language that in the face of an approaching threat, a hurricane, tropical storm, a wind event that could present with power interruption issues, they would cause the plant to trip offline, therefore going into an emergency response procedure, which results in the dumping of pressure and emissions. That conversations between PGV, HELCO, and the Department of Civil Defense take place to consider taking the plant offline prior to the actual impact. So that has been language included in their amendment or correction or a revision of their response plan. But we're continuing to make changes and improvements to the response plan.
Thank you. You've been very helpful.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, just a reminder. Just a reminder about the communication.
The scope.
Okay. Yes, please. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Chief. I still call Darryl Chief, hearkening back to, the time that he was fire chief. First of all, thank you for all your good work. About 2 weeks ago, Senator Ruderman appeared before us, and I asked him the question: how's our civil defense doing with regard to that emergency? And he stated very clearly that you guys are doing a wonderful job. He stated it to all of us, and I wanted to echo that. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you addressed the issue that was brought up by Mr. Travis and others regarding PGV and the nexus of their operations with the emergency that we're experiencing. And, quite frankly, all of that is really above my head. I'm trying to get up to speed on all of that. But we really are relying on you to be able to assess all of the risks that are associated with that. And, from time to time, we'd like to discuss that with you. So thank you very much for addressing that. What really interests me is the fiscal impacts of all of this to the county's budget. I think that's probably, the thing that concerns many of us. And so could you just briefly explain the process by which we could either get funding or reimbursement from federal sources, state sources? I'm actually maybe thinking FEMA. But if you could explain the process to us, what's required of you guys, the county, of us, so that we can at least, have some kind of background on that. And then after that, maybe explain what your department, other departments, the county, is doing in furtherance of that reimbursement or funding process.
Sure. Well, starting with the mayor's proclamation or declaration of emergency, followed by the governor's declaration of emergency, and pushing that up, requesting a presidential declaration, and that was relevant to the pursuit of a public assistance program application with FEMA to receive reimbursement and recovery monies for what we're experiencing with this particular disaster. The interesting part with this particular event, the lava flow, and that is this is an unusual event even for FEMA to deal with, because never before, or it hasn't had the scale and scope that we've seen with this event, even using Kalapana as an example, where you have the commercial district of the community, critical highway infrastructure and corridors being threatened. Never before has it been of this nature in our community. So FEMA has also acknowledged that this is a unique situation for them. But where we're at right now is we do have an approval of a public assistance grant application, and this is to recover some of the monies that have been spent as a response to, in preparation and prevention measures responding to this event. As example, the establishment of the alternate access roads, the Government Beach Road improvements, the Railroad Avenue, and the Chain of Crater. These are expenses, as well as some of the overtime expenses incurred by the various agencies in response to the threat from the lava flow, would be recoverable under the FEMA Category B expenses, qualified expenses under the Public Assistance Program. So right now it's a 75-25 match, if you want to call it. So the county has the position, or is in the position, to receive reimbursement up to 75% of those costs. And again, it's related to those activities, actions, and mitigation strategies that were deployed in response to, prior to any impact from the lava flow. FEMA has since, and State Civil Defense has since let us know that they're opening up the other categories of qualified expenditures, and we'll be pursuing and collecting the information from the departments. So our finance department has been awesome with reminding the agencies, the county departments, to track their expenses, to report their expenses, and to have the necessary documentation in order to submit for possible reimbursement.
Okay. So I would imagine that there's a lot of paperwork involved in all of this.
Yes, I mean, that's one of the keys to qualifying, is having the appropriate documentation in order to qualify.
And whose responsibility is it to ensure that all of the necessary paperwork is being done right now? Is it you, the mayor, finance? I mean, where is that resting right now?
It's with everyone, because every department is capturing their expenses and has been given instructions on how to do so, the format in which to submit it. Obviously, our finance department reviews it and confirms and processes the paperwork to ensure that it goes to the State Civil Defense, to FEMA, in the appropriate format and context that they need it in.
Okay, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's basically all the county agencies and departments are equally responsible and share in this, and we're all tracking our expenses and working with our finance department and the mayor to make sure the documentation is thorough and accurate for submittal.
Okay, so but is there one central clearinghouse for all of this information, or is it just going from all of the departments, to where?
To finance, our finance department.
Okay. So that's the brains behind the outfit on this one, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And have we received any reimbursements yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. But we're looking good, though, in that regard.
FEMA was
75%.
down. Yeah, FEMA representatives have been on island periodically, most recently in the latter part of the middle of January. And this included the FEMA representative number 3 in charge, as well as Region 9 acting administrator. So the executive staff from FEMA has been on island, as well as the Public Assistance Program coordinating officer has been on island as well. So the indication or the information we're getting is very favorable that we're going to be receiving the monies from FEMA.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You've been very informative. Chief, I've been wanting to, ask you for a presentation too, but we all know how busy you are, so I wanted to, thank Ms. Willie for at least making that initial move. But I'm just wondering if it would be possible for you to come back periodically, maybe once every 6 weeks or a month or whatever. I mean, at the call of the chair, I don't want to put, more responsibility on you, Mr. Chairman, but if you could maybe arrange to have Chief Oliveira come before us every so often, just so that we know what's going on. Would that be okay?
It's a consideration. It could be discussed.
Yeah, and then not for 60 minutes, just for 15 minutes, just to keep us abreast of the situation.
Happy to do so and share information and keep you apprised, because I know you have other people are reaching out to you for information as well. So the more we can share, the better our community is informed.
Yeah.
Happy
Thank
to
you.
do
But
so.
you've been doing a wonderful job, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chun. Councilmember Onishi.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Couple questions. You mentioned about railroad, about maybe being paved. Have you folks looked into I guess there's this oil that the pavers use to bond things together, and so have you folks looked into doing that instead of paving?
Yeah, I believe what you're talking about is like a chip seal.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the different options are being explored. Obviously, everyone's very sensitive to the costs, but also at the same time, I think everyone appreciates that if and when railroad needs to be used daily without any interruption, then if we can minimize the amount of maintenance that would be needed, it would minimize the disruption as well as make the conditions better for the commuters. So there's ongoing conversations about that. The other thing we see is that if you look at Railroad Avenue currently, even if the lava flow was to stop, it still provides us with an alternate access road in the event of some other type of a traffic interruption problem.
Right.
It could be something, I don't say benign, but something like a power line down or a major accident that would interfere with the ability for people to travel on the highway. So having that road or a large brush fire gives us options. And if we can have a road that is, again, all weather, easily traversed and safe, it again gives the community access options.
Okay, because I would think like using that oil product would be a little bit more cheaper than doing one whole paving of the roadway. Yeah? So okay, and the last thing would be, did Bryson Kuahara get to talk to you? In fact, yeah.
One of the things is, yes, Mr. Kuahara and others have spoken to me, as well as I've put them in contact with Warren Lee as well as State Highways. A lot of good ideas have come out of the community with solutions to addressing if and when the flow crosses the roadway, how we can bridge or breach or build on the roadway. Both the Department of Public Works and State Highways have identified solutions very similar to what Mr. Kuahara proposed and has done on a private property out there. So the engineers, the powers that be in those departments have spoken with him, appreciate his input and ideas, and have adopted or have similar ideas on how to breach the highway. And we're looking to Apa'a Street, Cemetery Road, as an opportunity to demonstrate how building over the flow could be done to, one is reconnect a road that might provide for another opportunity with public access for viewing, but also to demonstrate for the community that there is a solution that's viable should the lava cross Highway 130, that when conditions would allow, that you could restore Highway 130 fairly easily and get some normalcy back in the community quickly. So
because I was going to mention about Apa'a Street, because I remember kind of way back, this is like maybe on 2-3 months ago, there was a discussion, maybe using that street as an example to see how Bryson's idea would work, right? And so I'm hoping that you folks can move forward on that, because then at least if you can do it now, you'll be more prepared instead of like scrambling once it crosses over 130. Yeah, so.
And part of why you haven't seen any steps taken with doing the project on behalf of the county is that our Public Works Department is focused on completing chain of craters first and then moving resources up to Apa'a Street to do that. So their commitment right now is to get chain of craters done and then work on Apa'a Street.
Because, okay, so say lava does cross over 130, and then say it moves like about maybe 150 yards a day. From crossing over 130 to Railroad, how long an estimated time or days would it take to get to Railroad?
Initially, when we were seeing the faster rates of advancement, one of the calculations that we had discussed and why there was an urgency with getting those roads done as well as advancing on chain of craters was that at one point it could have been as quick as a matter of 23 days from when it crosses Highway 130 to Railroad Avenue, depending on the rate of advancement.
Okay, and then that advancement would be like how much yards per day?
It was in the neighborhood of 200 yards per day, 200 to 300 yards per day. Yeah. Okay. If you recall, we've seen advancement rates of over 400 yards per day in this flow.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilmember David?
Yes, hi. Chief, no, Mr. Chan put that in my mind. So, Chief Oliveira, I just wanted to express my mahalo to you and your staff and your department, as well as the administration. I just cannot imagine the amount of personal and professional stress that you folks are under. I try to, but I just can't. And this is like a perpetual emergency, and you don't see an end in the near future, and it's always unknown. So I really, really thank you and everyone for doing what you do and keeping us safe. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any other discussion? I'd like to give. Would you like to say something, Mr. Ilagan? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Director. Well, if I start thanking you, I'm going to go for quite a long time. So I just want to say just quickly, thank you for everything. And I personally know how hard work you do for Puna. I just wanted to take this time to figure out if it would be helpful, because the great work that you have done really helped me move on to other issues that is important to Puna. And there is one issue regarding planning with the lava. Would it be helpful if I reach out to the community to maybe potential lots or areas and find out? I know you had this talk before, but would it be helpful to have that discussion in council and try to figure out where new commercial areas would be valid, that wouldn't be in the front of the flow? Would that be counter to what you're trying to do? Or I just wanted to get your input on that.
I think anytime we can identify additional resources that might be available in the community prior to any kind of a threat or impact is better. You know, one of the things we try to do is identify resources from an emergency response standpoint. But what we would like to do better at is identify resources from a recovery standpoint. You know, civil defense maybe has a more higher focus on the response part of it. But as we learn from, let's say with Izell on the recovery side, making sure that we have access to certain resources for the community, water and ice, and how you partner with our community associations to allow for easier access, better coordination, better distribution of resources that way. And with the lava flow, you know, early on it was identifying properties or parcels that would allow for those businesses, such as the Puna Community Medical Center, Bay Clinic, to relocate their operations, even if they were going to consider using portable structures temporarily. It was identifying those properties early on. And if we had seen maybe the worst case scenario with the highway being cut, as well as the effects on, you know, let's say the service stations, how do you help identify points for sale for fuel for the community, knowing that if you don't, their commute to a gas station is no less than 40 miles maybe in one way. So I think anytime we can take the time ahead of any impact, ahead of any threat, pre-plan, identify the resources and assets that we have out there in partnership with the community, our business partners, our nonprofits, the better prepared we will be in the future when something happens.
Okay. Yeah, it's just been in my mind. And I know the other council members see this in the news and they want to know, and sometimes I'm too busy focused in the district, I forget to let the council members know what's going on, and you coming in and informing them would be really great, because I know Waimea is very far from Puna. I know Kona is even farther. So I just wanted to say one last thing, and the uncertainty of it all, I'm very glad that civil defense and the county and all the other departments acted quickly, because as you know, the flow sped up, stalled, sped up, stalled, sped up. It was all uncertain. And if you guys were any later and the scenario was different, you were well prepared. And I just want to say to the people that I represent in Puna, they really appreciate all the hard work that you put in. And it makes me happy that the right person's in the job because I don't have to worry as much. And I know that we've been compiling all the information, and thanks to my staff, Peter and Sarah, they've been awesome in dealing with all the constituents coming in and had concerns. And I'm just overwhelmed with thanks every time I see you. So I have the hardest time to get my thoughts together. I know I'm babbling. I know I'm just happy, and I get to focus on other things. And I know that you're taking care of us regarding the lava. But before I close, there is one thing I wanted to ask if you could share, was that people talk about taking advantage of the situation and capitalizing on the tourism. I remember a story someone told me that you requested to be dropped off like in the frontal area of the lava, and then you walked back to Pahoa or back to town, and you went through muds up. Well, if you could tell the story of what you experienced and how if people were trying to get close to the lava, they could experience the same thing. And then I'm done. But thank you.
Sure. Well, I guess what you're referring to is early on when we were trying to determine if the flow was following the path of steepest descent and how true that was looking, as well as its potential impact, which was the Malama Marketplace area. Requested that put on the ground in front of the flow and then walk down using a GPS trying to track the path of steepest descent. And it was very difficult because the terrain is it's nothing like what you see from the air. It's not flat for certain. There's a lot of micro topography features there with hills, gullies, ponds, everything. And as you mentioned, there were ponds that were at least waist deep in water that you'd cross. And the water was actually what was made it easy to find the path of steepest descent because you could follow flowing water after that particular rain. But what was very evident, as well as when we continue to fly over and after the brush fires where it's burned away the canopy or the covering on the ground, is the number of cracks, crevices, holes, and in some cases even lava tubes that people would not see just walking out there on the ground. It's not a leisurely walk out there. It's not a safe environment to take people who aren't prepared, and we would definitely have injuries. This same forest reserve is where we had back in 2002 one of our firefighters on a rescue mission fall 100 feet in a crack and survive, fortunately. But again, same forest area. I've talked to hunters who hunt in that area who have lost their dogs, can't find them. I've talked to residents in Koohi who have had to go to the aid of people who have fallen in cracks and calling for help in their backyards. So it is not a safe area to be out there without, a guide or without some preparation, without knowledge of the hazards. And it's one of the concerns we have with allowing people out there is we would put people in harm's way, and then we would be sending responders into an area to try to get them out of situations that could have been prevented. So it's not a safe environment, and when the time allows for safe access and viewing, we will support that.
Thank you, Director. And I just want to say thank you to the council members for all your support, because we couldn't do it without your help. So aloha and mahalo.
Thank you. We have one more. Valerie?
Thank you to you and to our mayor and administration for all you're doing out in the Puna area. And I just want to say a big mahalo to Troy Scott, too, because we're learning from what you're doing in the Puna area. We're learning in other communities because of it. And thanks to Troy Scott, who has been giving his time to some of our communities and motivating us to do mitigation type of planning because of this. So We have started the process because we look at if we become isolated, can we survive? So we are learning from all of this. So I want to just say thank you and mahalo for Civil Defense in allowing Troy Scott to come out to our communities.
Thank you, Ms. Poindexter. I have Ms. Willie.
Yes. And this is partly directed to you, Councilmember Iligan, is also identifying private properties or facilities that could be used by the county. I met with the owners of Lex Brody's, and or one of the two owners, and he said they would be willing to make their building available to you if that would be of service. I don't know what's happening with the police station fire, but I just think as you're looking to identify places to also reach out to the some of these buildings that are now vacant or potentially vacant. And just in terms of manpower, I know all of our budget constraints. I don't know where you are in budget, but I hope that you are forceful in your needs and what you need for your department. And that was really it. If you had a comment, you go ahead, and otherwise on the manpower issue.
Sure. Well, I think what is evident with the system we have here on this island is that everybody works together. All the agencies support one another and provide the resources needed to deal with the event, because no one incident or no one agency or department can stand alone and effectively manage anything. So we all work together, and I think it's very special, the situation and circumstances we have here. Even when FEMA has been in our EOC as well as the community meetings along with our state partners, they will comment that they've never seen such cooperation and collaboration anywhere. And again, it's just testament to our community, even reaching out to the community members. And really the thanks and praise goes out to all of the people on the ground out there. Our job is to help coordinate pieces and provide them with the resources so they can do their job. And a huge thank you should go out to the community, because they've been the ones dealing with this. From Izelle, where community members, neighbors helping neighbors, recovering from the event. When you talk about PGV, we have community members who are helping us with doing field monitoring of the H2S. So the community has time and time again stepped up to the plate and helped provide assistance to government when we don't have all the resources, and we need them. We need the community's partnership. That includes many of the private organizations and faith-based organizations that open up their doors to support the community. So a big thanks goes out to the community.
Okay, thank you. And I have one last question I'd like to ask Mr. Travis, if he would come up. And just identify yourself quickly.
I'm Tom Travis.
Yeah, and you mentioned like 3 areas that you felt that were still inadequate, several different areas. And I just, whether it's, not necessarily taking a lot of time right now, but sort of what would make those areas adequate? In other words, where as you all are looking from the community perspective, what are the, how would we get from inadequate to adequate? And I feel like Director is receptive and listening to you all at the community meetings. Anyway.
I think it would be very important to make it clear right now that the emergency response plan is a problem with PGV that has a long history, and that Darryl has been Civil Defense Director for a certain period of time. And I don't think many from the community, since I come from Lower Puna, I won't say anyone, but I don't think many from the community would be at all critical and anything but supportive and grateful to the effort that Darryl has done, and that includes with PGV. However, the underlying structure is that there was a permit. To get the original permit, PGV was required to come up with an approved set of emergency response plans for various issues. On top of that, county has emergency operating conditions, they have a document that guides Darryl that tells him what his emergency operating conditions are. The third document that needs to be understood is that there's a trifold for how to deal with PGV.
Excuse me one fast.
Excuse me,
Mr. Chair.
you know what?
Mr. Chair.
I think we're getting a little bit off subject here, so I'd like to stay within the scope of the communication. And that was for the discussion of the emergency response and with the Director of Civil Defense to coordinate with Island-wide Community Emergency Response Team Network. I think we're going into a little bit too broad, and I appreciate
Thank you, Mr.
it.
Chair.
But I'm going to have to please summarize.
Can we have him summarize
Please.
first? Because I meant for this to be a discussion on these, on community issues.
Mr. Chair, point of information or point of order.
Point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Onishi.
What the communication reads is just an update basically from Civil Defense and Public Works for about the lava flow.
No.
Then it's about the CERT team. Okay.
Correct.
But there's like nothing about like permitting and so forth and what the plans of this emergency for PGV. Okay, because we're talking about the lava flow.
Right.
So if we can keep it on that topic, that would be great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you go ahead and summarize?
Yes, I can. The PGV emergency response plan, which was developed.
Yeah, Michael.
The PGV emergency response plan, which was developed originally with community involvement, at least the one that I can get my hands on, still allows the plan to operate.
Mr. Travis, please. I don't want to go into too much about PGV and.
Mr. Paleka, we lived there. PGV, when the hurricane happened, the rest of you
I
had
understand.
wind. We had gas. Civil
Yes.
defense is
Mr.
required
Travis,
to deal.
please.
Civil defense is
Mr.
required
Travis,
to
please
deal.
come to order. Please come to order. The communication has a scope of discussion of, which includes the update of the flow status from the Director of Civil Defense to coordinate with Island-wide community emergency response efforts. Now, I appreciate your concerns. They were brought up in the discussions and public testimony. Now, we can ask the questions of the director, but I'm not going to have you here voicing out concerns again without having the director being able to respond. I think it's only fair to the director and to the rest of the members of the council to keep this in order. And please summarize. If there's a couple of points you would like to bring up questions for Mr. Oliveira, by all means, please do so. Thank you.
I think there needs to be a formal lessons learned review of how the emergency response failed for Tropical Storm Iselle. And I think that the emergency response plans, both the emergency operating conditions of the county, the trifold, and PGV's emergency response plans need to be reworked based on the initial conditions changing with the lava flow. I think that needs to be formal. I know that Darryl is doing that day to day, working PGV, and I appreciate it, and I thank him for that, but I think there needs to be a formal review. I think the county needs to take it upon their shoulders to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Travis.
Yeah, I just want to, I did.
Just a minute, Ms. Willie. Mr. Oliveira, if you could respond to those two concerns that he had brought up.
No, definitely, as I mentioned earlier, we have learned lessons with the various incidents that have occurred with PGV and the releases, and we have identified gaps and ways to make improvements. Again, we look forward to working with the community because, as Mr. Travis points out, it's in their backyard. They live with it. They're exposed to it. And again, we have an obligation to make sure we keep our community safe. And obviously, we would like to improve the tools that we use, not just for myself as the current administrator, but for the future administrators of civil defense, a tool that will be effective in them managing the events that occur and keeping the community safe.
Thank you. And in regards to the emergency response plan?
Right, as was mentioned, there was a response plan that was submitted to the county, but there are issues or concerns whether it's complete or needs to include or be modified based on current conditions. as I shared early on, is we requested some consideration be given to some of the changes in technology, improvements in I want to say one example, improvements in how you would assess the meteorological conditions, as well as how H2S or hydrogen sulfide disperses in the community. It used to be thought that it would just disperse as a nice blanket cloud, but as we've seen with some of the events that we've had or incident we've had, as well as lessons learned with other chemicals such as sulfur dioxide, we can have pockets or puffs of this product so that you could have readings showing no threat, no impact, and just a few feet away have readings that would exceed quantities or concentrations that would pose potential health risks. So we need to do a better job in assessing the impact of the release, and that's what we're looking to do.
I guess I might have one question regarding the lava flow and release of sulfide gas. Have we have any occurrences today?
With the current eruption and lava flow, there's no gaseous byproducts down, if you want to call it down slope. The sulfur dioxide that's released at the source at both Halemaumau and Pu'u. Since 2008, we've seen a consistent reduction in the concentrations, that we no longer see the high levels of sulfur dioxide that we saw back then. So as it relates to the actual lava flow, there is no hazards associated with any off-gassing of the lava flow.
Thank you. Mr. Chan?
One last short question. Sitting on the council, we feel pretty helpless, with what's going on out there. And again, thank you for your good job. But is there anything that we can do, that you would ask us to do in terms of legislation, perhaps emergency types? If you can't think of anything right now, I invite you to come to us if
Sure.
something does come to mind.
No, I'm sure I'll think of things and bring them to you. I think right now what is being asked is that we relook at in fact, all of our response plans, not just PGV, but every hazard that we're vulnerable to here, which is everything except blizzards, and make sure that our response plans are adequate for what we need to deal with.
Right. And, as Ms. Poindexter said, Troy is doing a real fine job in, getting the word out to all of us. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councilmember Willie.
Summing up, and thank you for everyone. And I did try to write this broadly, evacuation plan status and coordination with certain other organizations. But so I appreciate your input, and I know that it's stressful, and I'm so glad that you have somebody receptive there. But we can work on this in the future so that we address with more specificity some of your concerns, Mr. Travis. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more discussion? If not, I'm going to add one last note. I want to thank all the public for coming out and testifying. I want to thank Director Oliveira, and I want to thank my fellow council members. And as stated, we can address certain concerns that were brought up today, and thank you very much. We'll, I'm sure, make all the efforts we can. But hearing no more need for discussion, we move to, do I have any motion to?
We have to close file.
We already, shall we close file and do a vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing nothing but ayes, let's close that file. And a motion to adjourn? Any motion to adjourn? Oh, Valerie, motion to adjourn. Second by Mr. Onishi. All those in favor? Aye. Mahalo. Thank you very much.